everyone. In this video, we are going to begin our work on categorical propositions. This is presented in Chapter 5 of the Stanley Baronet textbook. In the last video, we dealt with informal fallacies, and so now, just so you are aware, we are moving into formal logic and returning in a way to some of the ideas pertaining to the structure of deductive arguments and what it means for a deductive argument to be valid. And so we're going to be looking at an entire genre of deductive arguments known as the branch of logic known as categorical logic. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with some ideas that are going to take us into much further areas of the properties of deduction. Okay, so just a little bit of history here, if I can get out of his way. Aristotle is one of our key heroes, as it were, of the history of logic and really, the history of philosophy in general. Aristotle is one of the major sort of founders of logic, as it were. He is a 4th century ancient Greek philosopher. If you take Intro to Philosophy in our program, you will read other works by him. In ethics, you will probably, definitely you will read his ethics, his Nicomachean Ethics. But he also was the first systematic thinker of logic. So he is the very first that we know of who developed a systematic foundation, science of logic, as it were, a kind of attempt to formulate an entire grammar of logic, as it were. And so we're going to be looking at the Aristotelian system of logic for quite some time now. And in Aristotelian logic, one of the major questions that animates the entire sort of study is the relationship of classes of objects. All right, so categorical logic is going to be very concerned with how certain types of objects sort of belong to one another or are categorized as belonging to one another or not, right? So it is interested in the relationships of parts to wholes and of particulars to universals, and so it can be a very abstract science of logic or a very all-encompassing way of thinking about how to explore the kinds of arguments we can make about things in the world based on the relationship of those things to one another. Okay, so we are beginning with section A, and we're going to be working our way through just some of the basic ingredients of categorical logic here. This will take some time in acquiring the skills that you need to be able to solve the kinds of problems that we're going to be dealing with. So in this video, just treat this as kind of a first step, as it were, in acquiring some of the vocabulary we need to be able to do the problems. So here are some of those basic ingredients of the systems we're going to be learning. We have in the A category what are known as categorical propositions. And in the B column, we're going to be looking at a kind of subset of categorical propositions. The terms are quantity, quality, and distribution. Quantity, quality, and distribution. And I'm going to explain, further what each of these terms are, but be sort of aware that that's what we're going to be exploring. So just as a reminder about classification and our sort of standard for deduction, the concept of validity is really what we're looking at when we're dealing with deductive arguments. And valid arguments are ones where it is impossible for a conclusion to be false given true premises, right? A valid argument is one in which the premises are claimed to guarantee the conclusion. So we're still going to be working with that technical definition of validity, but we're going to be exploring a little bit more just what sorts of categorical propositions are valid and which ones are invalid. And hopefully we can pick up some tools on being able to discern valid arguments based on certain properties of categorical logic. So another way to put this is that if an argument's premises are true, the conclusion has to be true, right? The conclusion is said to follow with logical necessity from the premises. And we're still interested very much in that standard. So in categorical propositions, we're not dealing with inductive arguments as we did in informal logic, where the truth of conclusions is not stemming from necessity, but from probability. Here we are interested in necessity, in actual logical certainty or logical definiteness, as it were. Okay. So still another way to put it is that a valid argument's conclusions can't be false if the premises are true. Okay. So we're going to try to explore a little bit further the structure of different types of categorical logic in terms of which they might be said to be valid or invalid. Okay. So there are, broadly speaking, four types of categorical assertions, four large genre of categorical statement that could be either valid or invalid. And I want you to work very diligently to learn the four types and to memorize them and ultimately be able to understand what they mean. The first type is called a universal affirmative. Universal affirmative. I will explain in more detail what each of these means, but let's just have a look at the full set first. We then have, as our second type, a universal negative. Universal negative. As our third type of assertion, we have a particular affirmative. Particular affirmative. And as our fourth type, we have a particular negative. So before understanding anything about these, what they might refer to, just have a look at some of the patterns so far. We have two universals, and we have two particulars, and we have two affirmatives, and two negatives. Okay, so four types, and they seem to be split amongst themselves in two different ways. Okay. So, to continue a little bit, I'm going to give some examples of each of these types. If we have a sentence like this, all dolphins look like they're smiling. All dolphins look like they're smiling. This is an ordinary language sentence. Maybe it's a little bit of a strange sentence, but it's an ordinary language sentence. And we could compare it to a sentence like this, which says none of the directions make sense. None of the directions make sense. Okay, so these are both ordinary language sentences that are categorical. They abide by certain structural laws, which mean that they are categorical propositions that fall into the four types. Okay, the first type is a universal affirmative. The first sentence is a universal affirmative. It's a universal affirmative because the type of thing it is referring to, dolphins, is universal. It is saying every dolphin in the world, all dolphins are smiling or look like they are smiling. And it is affirmative because the predicate, the quality of the subject, dolphins, is said to be one that can be positively defined. All right, so all dolphins have this predicate, this trait, smiling. So I am affirming the predicate, the trait, smiling, of the class of things, dolphins. So it is a universal affirmative. Now, if I look down at that second sentence, none of the directions make sense. This is an example of a universal negative. It is still universal because the type of thing I'm talking about, the subject, directions, is universal. I'm saying none of the directions in the world, none of the directions at least that have been pointed to me, make sense. And it is negative because I'm denying a certain property making sense of this class of things, directions. So this is a universal negative. I have a universal affirmative with all dolphins look like they're smiling, and universal negative. None of the directions make sense. This will get some time to. This will take some time to understand why these sentences belong to these categories, but this is what they look like. Now, if I looked at another example, an example of a particular claim, I can have a sentence like this, which says, quite a few students are interested in logic. This is an example of a particular affirmative sentence. It's particular in the sense that the subject, students, It's not all the students in the world, it's not universal, but it is a few, it is some students. So particular is contrasted with universal by suggesting that it is just some of the members of the class, students in this case. And then it's affirmative because the predicate, being interested in logic, is being positively attributed to that subject, students. So this is a particular affirmative. Now let's look at the particular negative. A sentence like this, lots of dogs are unfriendly, is an example of a particular negative. Again, this is a particular sentence because the subject term, the dogs, uh, I'm not referring to all the dogs, right, or every dog, but rather lots of dogs. That has to be particular because it is only referring to some members of the subject group, dogs, right? If it were to say all dogs, that would be an example of a universal. Now, it's a negative statement because the trait, the attribute, or the predicate is negative, unfriendly. I'm denying the predicate friendliness of this subject. I am sort of saying, uh, no, this set of this member dogs do not belong to the trait friendliness, if I can put it in that strange way. So a negative claim is always going to be kind of denying the membership of the thing in the trait. Okay. So this is going to take a little time to get familiar with. It's a sort of a strange way of thinking about some of our sentences, but really it will unlock a lot of properties that are very useful for us. All right. So moving along here, and just getting a little bit more schematic about the kind of thing we're talking about. Categorical proposition is one where the proposition is relating to classes of things, to classes of objects. Categorical logic is totally obsessed with types of thing. Does the thing belong to this other thing? Does the thing not belong to this other thing? And so on. That we're going to be doing this ad nauseum. Okay. So what are the things? Or let's, before we get ahead of ourselves, the class of things is the group of objects, right? The technical term is class. Sometimes I'll say class. Sometimes I'll say type. Sometimes I'll say group of things. Okay, so all those terms are synonymous. They all mean the same thing. The two classes of things in every categorical proposition are subjects on the one hand, and predicate terms on the other. So the subject is sort of the main class of the sentence. It is the group or set of groups that the sentence is really about, right? The sentence is describing something about this subject, right? So in English, you learn in grammar that, English sentences have a subject and then a verb and then an object, right? And that's kind of how the structure of all of our ordinary sentences works. Predicate terms are a little bit more tricky to understand. A predicate is really an attribute or a quality that is said to belong to the subject term or to not belong if it is negative to the subject term. So if I look at this sentence, all stand-up comedians are witty persons. There are two classes, two groups of things going on in this sentence. First, stand-up comedians, which is the subject. This is the driver of the sentence. This is the class that the sentence is really about. And then the predicate is sort of refining that subject. It is giving us a little bit more information. It is giving us an attribute. Being witty, being a witty person, is said to be an attribute of all stand-up comics. Okay, so we have two things split up by an all and an are. So we have to think about those terms as well. So to return to our four categories of categorical proposition, let's just rehash this so we become acquainted with it. We're going to formalize the structure so that we can sort of get a little bit more efficient with it. And eventually I want you to be able to really rattle these off quite quickly. Okay, so I encourage you now to write this down and start rewriting it as you're working on the problems to get acquainted with this. All SRP, all subjects are predicates. Some SRP, some subjects are predicated. No SRP, no subjects are predicated, and some S are not P. Some subjects are not predicated. Okay, so to return to our drawing board, the first sentence is our universal affirmative, all S are P. Some S are P is our particular affirmative. No S or P is our universal affirmative. And some S are not P is our particular negative. So let's look again at the universal affirmative and the structure of the underlying form of a universal affirmative. All S are P. A universal affirmative, here's our technical definition, is a proposition affirming that every member of the subject class is a member of the predicate class. All right, so the affirmative, the sense of the meaning of affirmative here means that the subject really does belong to the predicate class. Every member of the subject class is a member also of the predicate class. So if I have a sentence like this, all cell phones are expensive toys, and I take in this sentence cell phones to be my subject and expensive toys to be a predicate, I have two classes, cell phones and expensive toys. And the sentence is a universal affirmative because every subject is a member of the predicate class. Every cell phone is also an expensive toy. So this is a statement of identity, right? Of equivalence. I'm saying that all S are P. All S belongs to P. So that is a universal affirmative. Every member of the S group is also a member of the predicate group. Universal affirmatives are really all-encompassing statements in which we are affirming absolute membership of every member of the subject in the class of predicate. Okay, the universal negative takes this form, no SRP, and the technical definition of a universal negative is a proposition affirming that no member of the subject class are members of the predicate class. Total exclusion of membership of the subject group from the predicate group, right? So if I have a sentence like this, no cell phones are expensive toys. Again, our subject is cell phones, and our predicate group is expensive toys. This is still a universal sentence because I'm saying no cell phones, right? Not one cell phone in the world, right, is an expensive toy. So it's still referring to every cell phone. So it has a kind of universal quality to it, right? The difference now, though, is that it is negative. I'm excluding membership of the subject group from the predicate group. No members of S are members of P. No members of S are members of P. Total exclusion of the subject group from the predicate group. Okay, so we have our universal affirmative, all S are P, and we have our universal negative, no S or P. Now let's look at particular affirmative statements, moving into the particular. Some S or P would be the formal structure for all particular affirmatives, some S or P. The technical definition of a particular affirmative is a proposition affirming at least one member of the subject class is a member of the predicate class. So the difference here between the universal and the particular is that there's at least one member of the subject group or the subject class belonging to the predicate class. Not every and not none, but at least one. There might be a few, there might be some, but at least one. This is what counts as a particular. At least one member of the subject group belongs to the predicate group. So to return to our sentence and to slightly modify it to make it a particular sentence, some cell phones are expensive toys. Again, our subject group is cell phones, and our predicate group P is expensive toys. This is an example of a particular affirmative because we are saying at least one member of the subject group is also at the same time a member of the predicate group P, expensive toys. It is not saying all cell phones, and it is not saying no cell phones. It's saying some, so we know that at least one cell phone, S, is also a P, expensive toy. So this is a particular affirmative. at least one member of the S class is also a member of the P class. So I hope you're writing down these examples so far. Universal affirmative, all SRP, universal negative, no SRP, and particular affirmative, some SRP. Last but not least, in our 4 categories, is the particular negative. Some S are not P. Some S are not P. The technical definition of the particular negative is a proposition affirming that at least one member of the subject class is not a member of the predicate class. The key term here is not. A proposition affirming that at least one member of the subject class is not a member of the predicate class. To return to our example, we can modify it like this to make it a particular negative claim. Some cell phones are not expensive toys. Some cell phones are not expensive toys. If we look at our subject group, cell phones, we see it's still a particular because it says some. And then we are affirming that that subject group is not a member of the P group, expensive toys. There is at least one member of the S group, cell phone, that is affirmed to not belong to the P group, expensive toys. So I'm denying the membership of at least one member of the class S to membership in the class P. So at least one member of S is not a member of P. So just to repeat, we have our universal affirmative, all S are P, universal negative, no S are P, particular affirmative, some S are P, and particular negative, some S are not P. So we have, as a way of kind of standardizing and formalizing our 4 categories, what we have a kind of standard form notation. So moving on, we are going to be using a kind of a shorthand code, as it were, to abbreviate our 4 types of categorical proposition, because this does get a little clunky to kind of constantly refer to universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative, and so on. So we are going to use a single letter, to stand in as a abbreviation for each categorical form. Okay, we're going to use the letter A to stand in for our universal affirmative propositions. A will be standard notation for universal affirmative. E will stand in for our universal negative. E is going to be our notation for universal negative. I will be our notation for the particular affirmative, some SRP. And O is going to be our notation for particular negative. So write this down with me. A equals universal affirmative. E equals universal negative. I equals particular affirmative. And O equals particular negative. A, E, I, O. A, E, I, O. Okay. So to formalize each categorical proposition, remember, A, the universal negative, refers to sentences of this variety. All S are P. Every member of the S group is also a member of the P group. The E proposition is a universal negative and takes the form no SRP, no member of the S class is also a member of the P class, the predicate class. I is moving down into our particular categorical propositions, where we have a sentence like this. Some S are P, at least one member of the S class, the subject class, is also a member of the predicate class. And we have our O categorical propositions, which is our particular negative propositions. Some S are not P. So at least one member of the subject group is not also a member of the predicate group. A, E, I, O. Universal affirmative for A, universal negative for E, particular affirmative for I, and particular negative for O. So just check your understanding to see how you're doing with this. This is all very new, and it will take time for this to sink in. So it is okay if you're struggling with this or feel that it's not quite clicking yet. But let's just see how you are doing with it now. If I have a sentence like this, some political documentaries are films deserving of acclaim. Please write the sentence down so that you can kind of get the feel for it. Some political documentaries are films deserving of acclaim. Try to identify the subject of the sentence for yourself. What is the subject? What is the S class, as it were, in this sentence? Once you've done that, try to identify the predicate class of the sentence. What is the predicate class? And what is the category of proposition? What letter is it? What of the four types? Which of the four types of categorical proposition does this sentence belong to? So what's the subject? What's the predicate? And what is the category of proposition? Okay, so here's our sentence again. Some political documentaries are films deserving of acclaim. The subject of the sentence is political documentaries, this part right here. This is the class that, the sentence is kind of about. This is the driver of the sentence. The predicate of the sentence is films deserving of acclaim. So notice that predicates can be kind of lengthy, right? You can kind of bundle together lots of traits as a single class, okay? So don't think that a predicate or a subject really has to be just one word. You have to think about the meaning of the terms in order to decipher and pick up these classes of things, right? And now, what is our category of proposition? This is an example of an I claim, right? This is a particular affirmative because the subject is coming with the word some, so it's not all, it's not every, it's not a universal, right? It's not none. There is at least one political documentary, some, that belongs to the predicate group, films deserving of acclaim. So I'm affirming membership of at least one S political documentaries in the P group. So this is an example of a particular affirmative, or for shorthand, our I group, right? Okay, that is enough for now. So I want you to make sure you understand the kind of basic structure of categorical propositions. I want you to have at least written down for future reference the four categories. A is our universal affirmative. E is our universal negative. I is our particular affirmative. And O is our particular negative claim. Try to have at least a little bit of an understanding of the different classes of terms, subject and predicate, and how they relate to one another. In the next video, we're going to be talking about quantity, quality, and distribution, which will help us, I think, reinforce some of the basic ideas here in this introductory section. Okay, that's all, and I will see you next time.